Hey guys, it's John here from Sonic Drive Studio. Thank you so much for tuning into the channel, and I hope you're all doing well. Let's have some fun today, okay guys? So I got a PRS guitar last week, my first ever proper USA Paul Reed Smith guitar. I actually traded my beautiful Ibanez Prestige RGT320Z, you know, the pink neck-through guitar. And to be honest, that guitar was probably the best Ibanez that I'd ever played or owned. But I just didn't play it enough, so I couldn't justify keeping it. And I really wanted to get something that would be used more often and that would be better suited for my personal playing style. And I actually found somebody who wanted to trade my Ibanez for his PRS. So here it is, my Paul Reed Smith SC58. Such a beautiful and gorgeous guitar. I mean, look at this thing. Check it out. It's such a gorgeous piece. So it's basically a single cut PRS that's kind of a tribute to the old Les Pauls, the old 58 Les Pauls. So it has some classy and classic features to it, such as this bridge, which of course reminds you of a bridge of a Les Paul. And it also has these 5708 pickups in it, which are basically based on old vintage PAF style pickups. So these pickups are quite vintage sounding with a low output, but they're surprisingly versatile. They even work well for the heavier styles such as metal and heavy rock, so that's great. I'm not sure what type of pickups the nu metal players from the late 90s used, but these are the ones that are in my guitar, so these are the ones that I'm going to use for this video. Anyway, more about that guitar in future videos. Let's get to the point of this video. So whenever I think of PRS, I tend to think of bands from the late 90s and early 2000s, you know, the nu metal bands. Bands like Limp Bizkit, Incubus, Linkin Park, POD, Sevendust, and even Nickelback come to mind. Although Nickelback probably isn't technically a nu metal band, they still used PRS guitars. And a bunch more bands come to mind as well. And let's face it, a lot of those bands played PRS guitars. And which amps did they use? Yes, you guessed it correctly. A lot of those bands used to use Mesa Boogie Rectifier amps back in the day, like the one I have over here. A sound that is still very glorious to my ears. So now that I have a proper PRS, a thing that I say jokingly because I absolutely love my PRS SE guitars as well. Seriously, they are amazing. But now that I have a USA PRS, I thought it was time that I made a video that focuses on that sound. A sound that many of us still love, I think. So now let's take a listen to some riffs that I wrote with this guitar in that sort of nu metal style. And let's start by going through my Mesa Boogie Dual Rectifier over here. Let's take a listen. Here we go. Oh yeah, that sounded pretty glorious to my ears. As per usual, for these type of tones, I'm going through the Reds channel on modern mode. And if you know Sonic Drive Studio, it's definitely not a secret that I'm a fan of the modern mode on a rectifier. Modern mode is basically where you want to be at for that huge, scooped, and sort of fizzy sound. Now with this amplifier, I usually have the power settings on the back set to tube rectification, with the power switch set to bold. But more recently, I've been using the silicone diodes rectification with the power switch set to bold as well. And that also sounds really good to my ears. It sounds a bit more direct and punchy. So those are the settings that I'm using today for this video. As for the rest of the signal chain, the amp is being fed into my Fractal Audio X-Load reactive load box, which is being fed into my DAW. And in my DAW, I'm using Helix native by line 6 for running the OwnHammer impulse responses. And that allows me to run the super awesome OwnHammer Workhorse V30 collection. And of course, I had to use a cabinet that was really fitting for this tone. So I chose the 412 oversized cabinet. And I'm using the V30X speaker option with the high gain mix. The V30X is basically a blend between a more modern and a more vintage sounding V30. And this makes for a very beautifully balanced vintage 30 sound. And in my DAW, I'm also applying a low cut at around 83 Hz just to clear out some low end rumble. And of course, as you probably heard, guitars are double tracked. So we've got one guitar going on the right and another one on the left. Now, of course, this wouldn't be Sonic Drive Studio if we did not take this opportunity to also try my mini rectifier by Mesa Boogie. It obviously also carries the Rectifier name, and it's just a great little amp. And I do know that a lot of you guys are also very interested in this amplifier, so why not have some fun? It's a great little amp after all. So now let's take a listen to that same song, but this time with the tracks reamped through the Mini Rectifier 25. Let's see how that sounds. Here we go. Sweet! That also sounded pretty glorious to my ears. It doesn't sound exactly the same as the Dual Rectifier. No, that probably has to do with things like the wattage rating, 100 watts versus 25 watts, the power tube types, 6L6 versus EL84, but it's also probably due to the fact that the Mini Rectifier is voiced differently than my older 3-channel Dual Rectifier. So that's something to keep in mind. The more recent multi-watt rectifiers probably sound closer to the Mini Rectifier. Okay, so for the Mini, I'm on the red channel as well on modern mode, and the power switch is set to 25 watts, which is the maximum power setting for this amp. And trust me, this amplifier still is very loud and it has a lot of power for such a small amp. And the signal chain that follows is basically exactly the same as the signal chain for the Dual Rectifier, with the same impulse responses and the same low cut applied in the DAW. And I know you guys want this too, so let's also do a little A-B back-to-back isolated comparison so you can really hear the differences between the amplifiers, just to find out which one of the rectifiers brings that modern classic nu metal tone the best. And of course, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below as well. Here we go. Great stuff. So yeah, the dual rectifier has a little bit more oomph in the low end. It has a little bit more headroom, of course. And the top end and the mids on the mini rectifier do sound a little bit different, but I think they both sound pretty great. So I'm glad to have both, especially since I'm really a rectifier fan. But which one would you choose and why and where and how would you use it? Would you use it on stage or perhaps in the studio? How would it fit into your rig and with your playing style? Let me know in the comments down below because I'd be very interested in hearing your thoughts about this. And of course, also let me know if you think I nailed that nu metal PRS sound. Alright guys, that's all for this video. Thank you so much for watching. As I said, please drop a comment down below. And also, if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button along with the notification bell. You can also follow Sonic Drive Studio on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you soon. Cheers!